Welcome to Career High, where we dive deeply into school district scandals. Just kidding. Career High spotlights visionary educational leaders who are heading up the charge in career-connected learning. We'll be having conversations with administrators who are transforming high schools into launch pads for real-world success. I'm your host, Jeremy Smith, co-founder and CEO of Pegasix, an entirely new kind of higher ed that empowers students to start their careers 3 years earlier and $250,000 ahead of college grads. But more importantly is my guest today, which is Brian Riddick. Brian's the principal of Chicago-based Butler College Prep, which is one of over, I think, a dozen campuses of the Noble schools. As principal, Brian oversees the school's college preparatory curriculum and student support systems, among, I'm sure, 100 other things, because that's what principals do. So, Brian, appreciate you joining me on Career High.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So kind of rolling into the first question, pretty basic one. Tell me a little bit more about Butler.
Yeah, sure. I am Brian Riddick. I'm the principal here at Butler. I'm a founding staff member. So I moved to Chicago in 2013 to open Butler, founding English teacher. So I taught English for a while. And then 3 years later, I started the college team. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment too. Did that work for 3 years and then became the principal 7 years ago. So finishing up our 13th year here at Butler, my 7th year as principal. And Butler is one of Noble's 17 campuses. We are the farthest south. We're in the Pullman neighborhood. We opened again in 2013. There are 16 other campuses. One is a middle and high school. The rest are all high schools.
Gotcha. And where did you move from? You said you moved to Chicago. Where did you move from?
Yeah, so born and raised in North Carolina, but I moved here from Washington, D.C. in 2013.
So if you had to pick which, North Carolina, DC, or Chicago, what's your favorite?
Not North Carolina. I do love North Carolina. I love being from North Carolina. I love my Southern roots. I really appreciate being raised in the rural South. And then I spent 4 years in undergrad in Raleigh, which is North Carolina's capital, at North Carolina State. And so I love and appreciate all that as a background, but I would not live there now as an adult. I love and miss DC all the time, but I really do love Chicago. It's my favorite city.
Yeah.
A beautiful place to visit. I love that whoever the mayor is, they always introduce Chicago as a world-class city. So I borrow that language all the time when I'm talking about it, because it really is a world-class city. And I tell my students all the time they should actually learn to and find the joy and appreciation in being born and raised in a city like Chicago and having the access to all the things that we have at our fingertips here.
Fantastic. So diving a little bit into sort of the structure or approach of Butler, what it's Butler College Prep, obviously. What is sort of the mix or structure, of sort of college prep versus career connected learning, and what are your thoughts on those two sort of pillars and how Butler approaches it?
Yeah. So I guess to start to answer the question, I think it's a great question. I do think I have to answer it in a very broad way. So feel free to sort of like probe for like clarity or specificity as you see fit. You mentioned this Butler College Prep. I'm a former dean of college, so I did that work for 3 years, and then a friend of mine, Camille Taylor, became the dean of college, and she used to always start the conversation about college with students and with parents by saying, college is our middle name. And I think that was a great orientation.
That's funny.
Yeah, right. I think
I
it's
like that.
for students and families to sort of wrap their minds around. And the other thing to know about Noble is that our goal is that we're helping students access college. So college is the North Star. Our goal is to help students get there, ultimately get there and graduate. And so we sort of start freshman year with that message at all of our information sessions for 8th graders. I make sure we state that as the intent. When our students come in as freshmen, during open house and orientation, we iterate it at parent meetings. We reiterate it. We lead a lot of conversations with talking about college readiness, both in terms of GPA, through ACT, and of course through extracurriculars and school involvement. So we have this conversation very frequently because it is our North Star. So I think that's important to name. When it comes to career readiness, every school sort of has its own approach. And so when I was in the seat as dean of college, I found it important to make sure that we help students kind of like do more of the threading because students will often hear you say, okay, I need to do well in high school. And it's expected more or less for me to go to college so I can get a career. But sometimes they never really take a step back to think about what all that means as they're moving through the system and their kids. And so, I feel it's our responsibility to sort of own more of that to help them do more of that threading. So we tackle it a few different ways. I'll mention some things that work for us. One is that we have what's called a college seminar class. So our juniors and our seniors will all work with college counselors in their 11th and 12th grade years, mostly to the
And these are counselors who work at Butler.
Correct. Yep. These are counselors who work at Butler who make up the college team. And so our juniors and seniors work with them during their 11th and 12th grade years to the end of just like being college ready, like getting ready to apply for schools, working on personal statements, thinking about what it means to register for classes, having a conversation about financial aid, looking for scholarships. So that's something that we do 11th and 12th grade. Well, a few years ago, we rolled out a class for freshmen. And part of extending the class offerings in that way was to help our 14 and 15-year-olds start to think about that as freshmen,
Right.
with the goal of helping that inform the rest of their high school career, right? So we realized we would meet juniors, and by second semester, you take a kid who has like a 2.6 and like a 18 on the ACT. They have some options, right? But we started to ask ourselves, like, what would be the difference if we started working with that student as a freshman? And the other thing that we are pushing ourselves to do through that freshman class is let's talk more about careers. We've had spaces in the class where we do something like a strengths finders assessment. Kids
Yeah.
can start to identify like passions, interests.
What do you use? Do you use a tool for that, or how do you?
Yeah, it depends on the year and depends on like what sort of resources we have. One year I think we tapped a grant that allowed us to actually do the Clifton Strengths Finders assessment for students. I think it costed us about $40 a kid. But with it, we were able to, of course, get that data for them. We were able to walk them through what the data showed them and then talk to them about how those strengths should then inform interests, how those interests and passions should then inform what you study in undergrad and how you turn that into a career. So doing more of that connection between like how do you find a job that you're interested and passionate about versus finding a job that just allows you to pay the bills, and how does
Right.
that then affect life overall? Our goal at Noble, our vision, it states that we aim to help our students graduate, go to college, and lead exemplary lives. And I think a part of that is the difference in coming to a job that I like every day. I always tell students when I'm having this convo with kids, if we are kind of like one-on-one, I use my uncle Frank, who lives in New York, as an example, who's been a mailman for almost 40 years, I think. He hates his job, and he'll tell you that every day. He'll also tell you that he's going to go every day because he knows it's a guaranteed salary. He knows he has bills to pay, and he knows at some point he's going to retire. At some point soon, he would say. But I use him as an example because he would tell you outright, I hate this job. That's not something I would ever say because I love my job, but I love my job because I've been intentional about being in this space. And so we have that career readiness conversation.
It's funny because it was a similar thing with me and my dad. My dad, he was an attorney, and so unsurprisingly, growing up, I wanted to be an attorney.
Mhm.
And for as long as I can remember, he would tell me, "Do not become an attorney." He hated it because he went in. His dad, my grandfather, was an attorney, and so he went into law to work with his dad. But then his dad died, and so now it was just the law. It was
Yep.
just him and the law.
Yeah.
And yeah, he hated it. And so every time I ever brought up wanting to become a lawyer, he was like, "Do not do it. I hate it. You'll hate it." And yeah, I didn't really listen to him until probably I was 18 or 9. No, I was probably 19 or 20, and then I went to my first internship, which was not in the law. It was some, I think, ad agency or something. And around the same time I took, I think, the LSAT, and not that the LSAT is necessarily indicative of what being a lawyer is like,
Sure.
but still, it was just an awful experience studying for the LSAT, plus everything my dad had been saying for 20 years to me. Plus, I just had this internship not in law that was fantastic. And I just said, okay, I'm not going to be a lawyer.
Yep.
And it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
Yes, yes. I think you bring up internships. So we have like three pathways to internships here, which we have leveraged for a few reasons. One is I tell students like it is the surest way to just learn more about a job you're interested in. Obviously, two, a lot of our students would like to make money, and so it's been a great avenue to get some work experience while also doing something like really beneficial. And then three, I think I think every millennial sort of like wrestles with um, the you need to get a job, but you need to have experience, and you can't have experience until you get a job. Like I think we all remember that era of life. So for me, I pitch it to parents as we are giving your students an opportunity to have an internship before they go to college, which is a game changer.
Yeah.
And then I think fourthly, which I didn't mention, is just being able to put that on a resume or being able to add that to a college application. So we have two. One is with Genesis Works, which other schools in Chicago use and other schools in Noble. Urban Alliance. Those two are very similar in that we send seniors for the second half of their day to do to intern with companies here in Chicago that have been like vetted through each of those. And
Yeah.
then the third we established um, a couple years ago. I was at a meeting at Chicago State, and there were some folks there from Northwestern, and they were specifically interested in how we communicate awareness about Alzheimer's and dementia in neighborhoods of color. And so we worked together to actually create an internship. So we have 3 to 4 students who every summer go intern with Northwestern School of Medicine, specifically to work with Alzheimer's and dementia research, and that's been really pivotal as well.
What roles are they typically occupying, at the companies that you guys have partnership?
Yep, a lot of it is like clerical. A lot of it is like clerical tasks.
Okay.
They're doing research with Northwestern, so they're actually in the lab. I think Genesis works with human resources, IT, and maybe there may be some like desk work.
Yeah.
But those are primarily the roles they take with Urban Alliance and Genesis Works. And then some years ago, there was a institute called the Chicago Summer Business Institute. I don't know if they're still active. I don't think we had students who participated last year, and it was the same sort of like internship op. It was just over the summer.
Gotcha. And have you found that those experiences have influenced the paths of some of the seniors that have gone through those internships?
Yeah, I would say it's about 50-50. So we have a lot of students who are interested in like science and medicine. And so I think the students who have been able to intern at Northwestern have probably found it the most beneficial because it's like, like, oh, I'm interested in science, or maybe I want to do this instead, or I'm interested in research, and maybe I want to do this. So I think those students have perhaps felt like more of a direct correlation to what their interests are. I think other students who intern with Genesis Works, Urban Alliance, CSBI, I don't think there's always been as clear a correlation between what they want to do, but I think they have built and learned really great career readiness skills that are going to make them, competitive. And it's honestly going to help them a lot when they do enter the career force.
Yeah.
Because the flip side of that is that we actually have a few alum who work for our organization, both at Noble, or both at Butler, but also beyond. And frankly, sometimes I'm like, that's something they're just gonna have to learn on the
Right.
job. And so
Yep.
I think some of our students are getting a lot of that, as juniors and seniors, as opposed to learning
Yeah.
our way once they actually clock in for the first time.
No, those professional skills are, I mean, I still remember some of them that I got at my internship. Like one, funny enough, I just gave this advice to my son as he was going to his first job. Or, I mean, he's 16, so he's going to a high school job. But which is when my boss would ask me to do something or ask me a question, I would say, yeah. And he said, say yes, not yeah. And it's fine if you have friends and family or what
Sure.
have you, but in a professional setting, say yes.
Yeah.
And I said, gotcha. I mean, this was 30 years ago,
Yeah.
but it's just the professionalization that can happen in those sorts of experiences really do carry over. And it's a lot of the little stuff, but it's important stuff.
For sure.
As long as you're interacting with humans, those little things are going to be important things.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, did you find when did you start introducing like the career exploration and the internships and those things? When did you introduce those into the program?
Yeah, so I think maybe something that predates all this is in 2014 or maybe 2015, I think it was 2014. I worked with my first principal or our founding principal to establish a career fair. We called it Success Looks Like Me. And I went to him and I have at Noble campuses, we have these things called advisories. It is akin to a homeroom, except for the adult who's assigned with the students will loop with the students throughout their 4 years. The primary role is that the school needs a liaison between the family and the school sometimes. And so that person often operates as that liaison for parents, but also as like a primary contact on campus. And a person with whom they can talk to about matriculation, about college exploration, sometimes about personal things. So in and through my advisory, I used to talk to my boys all the time about careers, and I had four who were like, "I want to be an engineer." And I went to an engineering school when I was still confused about what engineers did. And so one day I was just like, "What do you think an engineer does?" And as I'm talking to them about it, and I realized like the confusion they had, I was like, "You know what? You are not wrong. You're not don't feel bad about not knowing because people do these things all the time and people
All
have
the time.
no clue like what they are." So let me actually like try to get a couple engineering buddies on the phone. So I did that. I had a couple friends talk to them about engineering. At that point, I had a friend who was working, I think in Ohio, on one of those rotating programs with like General Electric. The kids loved it. It was like an amazing convo. And so I went to my principal and I was like, I think we need to do this on like a wider scale. I think more students need to know more about the careers that they are kind of throwing around.
Yeah.
They need to know how to get there, what school looks like, what high school classes look like. They need to know what a day in the life looks like. And so when I told him that, he's like, "Okay, cool, you should plan it." So then I say, "Okay." So I worked with my peers at that time to, I think we invited about 20 professionals out. We called it Success Looks Like Me because the premise of it was we wanted them to see Black and brown people in the city who have
Right.
extraordinary careers
Yes.
doing jobs they would never even guess is a job. So that
Right.
was sort of the goal. And it worked out well. We invited a bunch of professionals. The first one was amazing, and then it just grew legs, and people took it over after me and just made it bigger and bigger. But through that, we were able to see like kids have very vast and varied interest. You know, humans are dynamic and multifaceted, so we got to talk to them about what it means to launch your own business while also working as a lawyer. What does it mean to be an attorney who's also dibbling and dabbling in real estate? What is a chemical engineer?
Right.
What does a chemical engineer do? And that really opened up our eyes to the kind of exposure that we really needed to funnel into our day to day a little bit more frequently, to offer some of the like wraparound around college readiness.
Gotcha. And then what about the internship program? Was that around the same time? Or
Yep, CSBI was our first one. So I would say in maybe like 2014, we call Wind of CSBI, and at that point, we also do a program called Summer of a Lifetime, where students go to a college campus for anywhere between one and now it's about 1 and 4 weeks. It used to be anywhere between 2 and 6 uh, for existing college programs. So most of the time, it is a program that the college already offers.
right.
The school kind of functions as a partner to get kids into the program, and then we cover a bit of the financial costs. So,
Gotcha.
uh,
Is it local that they go back and forth between home and school, or are they going and living on campus during
yep,
this?
good question. It's a little bit of both, but mostly off campus. So we've sent kids as far as summer discovery at UCLA to, one of my basketball players stopped me yesterday, and he's so excited because he's going to Summer of a Lifetime at UConn. Um, we've sent kids to Spelman. We've sent kids to Howard. We've sent kids to IIT up the street. We've sent kids to UIC. So um, in the year that took off, we also then offered CSBI. And then from there, we caught wind of more of these like internship adjacent programs. So that's sort of what started us dibbling and dabbling in this, and then we just more opportunities that popped up. We would reach out and just see, is this a potential partnership? Is this something we can do? And how can we facilitate it through our existing school day? Can we make it work?
Right. Well, what sort of tensions have you run into in sort of mixing the, career connected stuff with the college prep stuff? Because while there is some overlap, there's also a lot that doesn't overlap.
For
So I'm
sure.
curious what sort of stresses you've run into and how you've dealt with those.
Yeah, that's a good question. It has felt dichotomous sometimes. I think like we've really just tried to pitch it as an and. It's like the ACT and the SAT don't necessarily prepare you for the work you're going to do in college,
Right.
but you need that assessment to get into college. And so I think that comes up more so with our that comes up with curriculum and how we like decide curriculum more than I think career readiness. But I think we've sort of just settled on, this class may or may not help you at all once you
Right.
are into your career. But for now, you need to do well in this class so you
Right.
can get a good GPA, so you can
Right.
go to college. So if you don't like biochem, you can go to college and study like, British literature because that's what you're passionate about. So I think we've been like a little.
I don't think anybody's passionate about British literature.
I mean, if you show me some old school Emily Bronte, I might actually read it just for kicks and giggles. I don't know, but I would agree that people may not generally be very. But I might read it just to see what she said. I don't know.
I remember this was eighth grade, but I remember reading wasn't a tale of no, it was a Tale of Two Cities, and I would get into bed to read the book for school, but I would get into bed, to read the book before I went to sleep. And every single time I would start at the top of page 13. And by the time I got to the bottom, I was asleep. Every night I could not make it through page 13.
Well, at least you knew what would knock you out.
It's true. Yeah, maybe. I never thought about that. If I'm
Yeah.
having trouble sleep every once in a while, I have trouble
Absolutely.
sleeping.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. I'll read that again.
You do not need what is a sleep aid? You do not need that
Yeah.
sleep aid. You can just grab a book.
Yeah, I never made that connection till now. Thank you. Great.
But that's sort of like where we landed. We've been like, like we're not gonna argue about whether this is gonna prepare you, but we are gonna be honest about the fact that you need this thing.
Yes.
In order to get to the next level. And I think what we've also just sort of like paired, and I would say we've done better like pairing the two is saying, and we want to make sure that you feel ready to go to school and explore career paths. The other tension I'll mention, Jeremy, is that we're aware a lot of our students don't have time. So what I mean by that is a lot of students don't have the opportunity to really explore because they need to start making money. And
Right.
so we say that like, and I'll tell kids, I'll just be honest and say, it doesn't really matter sometimes what your socioeconomic status is. By the time you graduate, you probably need to make money no matter what.
Right.
For some people, it's more urgent than others, certainly. And so we have conversations about career readiness with that in mind. It's just like, go to school and explore, go to school. And, I was a undecided, undeclared person, and it really worked for me. I made it happen in 4.5 years still. So, and I say that because that worked and it was helpful. But I also want kids to understand there's some urgency to getting out of school, starting to think about the debt, starting to get to work, and all those things too.
Yeah. No, and I like that approach. I mean, in general, the way that you're taking, which is it is a very pragmatic approach where, okay, so these kids, they're not going to have the time. Like they need to earn as soon as they get out of college. So here's what you need to know, and here's how you need to think about it. Or you kids, you are going to be able to go to college, but these things aren't going to be relevant. But you still need to do them because it's the key to unlocking that door. It won't help you once the door is open.
For
But you can't get the door open without those, those courses. Those are the key or part of the key. And I think kids, I think human beings in general, but kids in particular, like they respond well to that sort of honesty and that transparency.
Yes.
And it gives them trust in the greater system
Yes.
when you are telling them things that either at one point later, they're going to find out or figure out that was useless, or it's just going to be obvious to them
For sure.
that this is useless. And if you're not, telling them the sky is purple when it's clearly blue, that gives them trust in you for other things where you just need them to trust you.
For sure. One of my favorite calls from an alum was them calling me to tell me about they had not paid the credit card off, but they knew what they needed to do for the credit card. And it was a lesson from a class we did when they were a junior in high school. And they were like, I remember this credit lesson. So I'm thinking about doing this. what is your advice about this? And this is the first time I had talked to the kids since they graduated. And I was like, well, one, I'm glad you called. Two, I'm glad you were listening because I thought I was talking to the wall that day. But to the point of trust, I think being able to connect those dots and say, this is a life skill I learned, and this is something I can apply once I've graduated. So
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. So last question, and then I will let you go. What is there something I should have asked, or something you want to brag about, something particularly unique about Butler that we didn't touch on?
I think two unique things. One is we really try to make sure our students can see themselves in the staff, and so um, that is reflective of like the people we hire. But also, I think it's really important that our kids get to engage with adults who have been career changers, the career switchers, right? Talk to the person who worked in finance who now wants to teach you math. Talk to the person who has worked a few different jobs and they've now come to education. Talk to
Yeah.
the person who has a few different jobs and they also work
Right.
as a teacher.
It's interesting, because this was some years ago, and I was part of an organization here in Kansas City called Centurions, and it's kind of like a young professionals group. And something that we would do together, a lot of activities we would do together. One of them was, it was kind of a 2-year program, and once a year we would all go, arrange a trip and go to another city
Okay.
and speak to various, politicians and business leaders and, community leaders, about their city, and just how it all works and the things they do, so that we could bring best practices back to Kansas City. And the first place we went to, the place we went to in our first year, was New Orleans. And New Orleans was really interesting because it was a city that, and this was back in 2014 or 15.
Okay.
And so this was a city, it wasn't too far removed from Katrina. And so they actually had the both misfortune and opportunity to restart things from scratch, whether it was certain school systems or business districts or residential neighborhoods, whatever it was. They could start with a clean slate because it had almost literally been wiped away
Sure.
by the hurricane and the floods. And one thing that was, it really stuck with me. It's probably the, I remember a couple things from that trip, but this one, just stands out far and above, which is, and I don't remember sort of the legal machinations behind it all, but they had created some neighborhoods where it was, I'm gonna make up the numbers, but it was like, 80% just market-based housing, where you could buy and sell whatever price the market was, and then 20% or 15%, rent control, or not rent control, but sort of house price control.
Yep.
And that enabled lower income families to afford to live in these neighborhoods, which were, nice neighborhoods and largely affluent neighborhoods. Uh, and the reason they did that, or one of the main reasons they did that, touches on exactly what you were talking about, which is, you end up, most people end up being what they are around. They're around doctors and lawyers and actors, they're gonna more likely be a doctor, lawyer, actor, or something, touching that. Or if it's, plumbers, electricians, and HVAC repair, then they're more likely to be that. And so by doing the, mixed neighborhoods in terms of the socioeconomic strata, it was a way of putting, on a day-to-day basis, the lower income kids, just putting them in the mix
Yes.
with the kids and the parents who were doctors and lawyers and accountants and architects, so that that would be seen as a possibility by them, right? They would see themselves in that, like you were talking about
Absolutely.
with the teachers. And I thought it was just a brilliant way of, civic engineering, or whatever you call it. I thought it was a really thoughtful
Yep.
and effective way to do something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's super dope. And the other thing I'll say that's unique about Noble is we have an alumni outreach arm of the college work. And so once students graduate, they are invited to stay in touch with us. And so we have what's called an alumni success coach. It is a person who works for Butler and two other campuses, and they manage like communication with alum. And it's vast. It's everything from I need help enrolling in my next semester courses to I don't have a book and I need this book. So, the goal is just that there's a person they can connect with and talk to.
That's great.
For either our students who are first gen or students, I talk to students all the time who, their parents went to school in the 80s. It's like the landscape is much different. Probably just need to talk to somebody, right? Or have like a point of contact, someone you can reach out to. And
Yeah.
so that has really helped us to stay connected with students, to help students troubleshoot and problem solve. Because one of the things that was really surprising to me is the number of kids who go to college and who just say, I can't figure this out, I'm gonna go back home.
Yeah.
I did not want to go back home, so it was never on my radar
Right.
to go back home. I was trying to figure out how I could stay no matter what.
Right.
If kids are like homesick, for some
Yeah.
of them, it is I want to go home. And if they call their parents and their parents can't figure it out, they're like, hey, just come home. And that happens more than I even imagined. And so I love this additional arm of the work because there's a person who helps to problem solve and troubleshoot with students so that it gives them another at bat at staying at school.
All right. Well, Brian, want to thank you for joining me today on Career High.
Sure.
Loved all the background on Butler, the things that you guys are doing. You're enormously long time of being involved with the school, which is fantastic for a lot of reasons.
It has been a while. Sometimes I think like, what? Well, 13 years seems crazy. I've been here almost as long as in the place where I grew up. So,
Yeah.
put that into perspective, it's interesting.
It's wild. Well, fantastic. Like I said, appreciate you joining me and wish you and Butler the best of luck, although I don't think you'll need it because it seems like you guys are doing all the right things.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me too.
Absolutely.
See you.
See you.